Hey, I'm Beth Riley, and this is the Artist Spotlight podcast series, and today I'm speaking with Livingston Taylor. Livingston, how are you?
I'm good, Beth. So nice to speak with you this fine day.
You too, yeah. Thanks for agreeing to chat with me.
My pleasure.
Now, you've been a professional musician for over 5 decades, and we'll get into that in just a bit, but I have to mention, you're also a professor at Berklee College of Music in Boston, Massachusetts, where you have been teaching for roughly 3 decades, over 3?
Yes, over 30 years at Berklee. Now I'm a professor emeritus at Berklee, and I've gone and I've started teaching an occasional course at the Frost School of Music at the University of Miami in Coral Gables, Florida.
Okay, so you got a lot of things going on right now.
Indeed.
One of the big things that happened to you, in my opinion, is you have received an honorary doctorate from St. Anselm?
St. Anselm's College.
Yeah.
Yes, that was a few decades ago.
Yeah.
They gave me an honorary doctorate, which was a lovely honor and much appreciated.
Yeah.
And so now people can legitimately call me the doctor of good times. Yes.
Yeah, I didn't know whether to call you doctor, professor.
Yes.
A little bit of both, right?
Well, in your case, Beth, Liv is just fine.
Liv? Okay, well, I will call you that. Growing up in Boston, you were the 4th out of 5 kids. You and your siblings, all very musical. We'll talk about your living siblings in just a bit, but I want to touch on your late brother Alex, who sadly passed away in 1993. I've read that you have called him the greatest older brother ever. Tell me about your relationship with him and what made him such a great older brother.
As older brothers are wont to do, he fought the battles with our parents. He blazed the trails. He demanded to listen to Elvis Presley records and Ike and Tina Turner and the Swan Silvertones and the music alternatives that my parents, who were very into Broadway musicals and that type of music, they found my brother Alex's musical choices to be less tonally pleasing to their ears. Anyhow, Alex fought those battles, and having fought with Alex, my parents didn't have the wherewithal to fight James, Kate, myself, or our little brother Hugh. And so Alex really made our path much easier. As well, he was a very protective guy. And he was the older brother, and although I was sort of a skinny bit of a runt of a kid, nobody ever dared mess with me, ever, because they knew that any trespass against me would be avenged by my older brother Alex. And it left me in a very secure position in Chapel Hill, North Carolina.
That's great to have a relationship like that with any sibling.
Yes.
You mentioned your brother James. Everybody knows James Taylor.
Many people know James Taylor, and the answer is that all of us fade. I assure you, young people do not know who Livingston Taylor is or James Taylor.
Yeah.
And
well, that's my goal, is to change that.
I understand, but that notwithstanding, those ripples that reach the edge of the pond, very difficult to keep those ripples from continuing to go out. And yes, as I'm fond of saying, inattention is the right of youth.
You've not only toured with him, but he's also recorded some of your songs. I can think of a couple of them right off, Going Round One More Time, Boatman, I Can Dream of You. His debut album came out a couple of years before yours. What do you think sets you apart from him?
James Taylor is an interesting guy. He has an ability to withstand more spotlight than I'm interested in. The problem with being seen is that when you are being seen, it becomes very difficult to see. And so some of us like a bit of shade. And one of my eternal strokes of gratitude, bolts of gratitude, as it were, is to my brother James for providing me with beautiful shade. The sun has shone brightly on James, and often too brightly. And the shade that he's provided has really allowed me to see without being seen. And it's been a great, great gift. The assumption is that being in the sun is the best thing. And the fact is that what is great is not being in the sun, but being in the light.
You were friends with Carly Simon before she and James got together, and you two have remained in a great friendship. So I have to ask, do you have a favorite Carly Simon song?
Carly Simon is a truly great pop song writer. Let the River Run is a very, very fine piece of writing. I personally love and play Love and Use the Right Thing to Do. Carly is a very fine pop songwriter.
You talked about your sister Kate earlier. She just released an album last year titled Why Wait? So why wait to ask you about your relationship growing up and now? I mean, has it changed any over the years?
First off, the five of us, now four of us, are very close as siblings. We're close in age. When our youngest brother was born, Alex was 6 years old. So that's 5 kids in 6 years. And so we're close in age, and we've shared a common life as performers and entertainers. It's been very good to have that close, large family.
Your younger sibling, he owns an inn on Martha's Vineyard called the Outermost Inn. Have you ever stayed there before?
I have been to Hughie's house many times. The inn part of it is now closed. Now it's just a restaurant.
Got you. Okay.
A high-end restaurant, the Outermost Inn in Aquina, Massachusetts. Yes.
Do you get a family discount?
Often they forget to bring me a check, and don't worry, doubtless Hugh gets it back one way or another.
You have written a couple of books in your time, and I want to touch on those and what made you want to go that route.
I did a couple of children's books, and that was just fine and frivolous, and Random House asked me to do it, and I did it. And so that was in part for them to be able to take my modest celebrity and build on marketing that. So although I'm delighted with those books and find them amusing, that's not serious. The serious book I wrote was called Stage Performance Technique, Stage Performance, about how to be on stage, and that's built around my college class.
Okay. You are known, as your website puts it, equal parts Mark Twain, college professor, and musical icon. You have released 22 albums. You've also appeared with not only your brother James, but also Linda Ronstadt, Joni Mitchell, Fleetwood Mac, and a guy that I grew up listening to a lot, James Taylor. Oh, wait, no, sorry, Jimmy Buffett.
Jimmy Buffett, yeah. Jimmy and I are old friends. Actually, I'm planning on seeing Jimmy tomorrow. He's up in Boston, and he and I are going to get together and kick around a little, hopefully.
Yeah, my parents are big-time parrot heads, so lots of Jimmy Buffett.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
He's really a remarkable man.
I want to talk about another JB. I'm not sure if you have any connection to him, but Jackson Browne. I know James was on tour with him.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on Jackson Browne? I always ask everybody I talk to.
Well, I love Jackson. He's obviously a gifted writer, and he's a down-to-earth fella. And, I see Jackson every few years, and always glad to catch up, and very cordial relationship with him, and he's very much as he seems, highly competent, very gifted, and he's an earnest fella.
Yes. So from 1970 up until now, how do you think your style has changed musically, if any at all?
Well, I'm technically a better songwriter, meaning it does not necessarily that I'm writing better songs, but technically I know a lot more about songs, about vowel sounds, about melody progressions, about chord progressions, those things. And it doesn't make you a better songwriter, but it does mean that you go down fewer blind canyons.
Right.
Once you know what you're doing, because you recognized early that this isn't going to go anywhere. In fact, it's very exciting when it does go somewhere, and you know it's going to. Very pleasant.
So who would you say some of your influences were and are still?
Well, certainly I listened to a lot of Ray Charles. I listened to a lot of Woody Guthrie, Rodgers and Hammerstein, Rodgers and Hart. I was a huge Bacharach David fan, Burt Bacharach and Hal David.
Yeah.
Listened to a lot of those early Dionne Warwick records that they had written and produced. Spent a lot of time listening to that. Those are some of my influences.
Okay. And a couple of fun questions that I always like to ask is, if you could have 3 to 5 albums with you on a deserted island, which 3 to 5 would you take?
Well, if I were going to take one of mine, I would take an album called There You Are Again from 2005. That was a very fine record. I would take The Genius of Ray Charles. You'd have to take that. You'd have to take Dave Brubeck, Take 5. Really the high point of commercial contemporary jazz. You've got to take Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, and in particular that fourth movement. And the question is, can you get by without some Aaron Copland or some Ella Fitzgerald? And I think it would be difficult to do so, but that gives you a sampling of what I'd take. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. My husband, James, and I, we always talk about if we had a time machine and we could go back in time and meet each other earlier, is there a certain time period or a year that you would want to go back to if you had time travel capability?
Yeah, it's an interesting question for historical reasons. There are a lot of places I'd like to go. But the fact is that in spite of all the complaining that is going on, Beth, we are living in absolutely the best times ever. More human beings living longer lives, wealthier than ever before, with less violence, with more knowledge, more infrastructure. It's a truly golden age of Homo sapien right now. And no, there is no time. I do not want to live before Google and the internet. Now, I would like to live in a place where we've conquered interdimensional travel, because I'd like to be able to wander the universe. But in lieu of that, in terms of being shackled by Einsteinian physics, heck, here we are.
Yes. For you, either musically or any kind of way you want to put a spin on this, what is next for you?
It's an interesting question. There are a couple of records that I'm absolutely busting to make. The problem is that records are expensive to make, and because they return so little, music is worth so little these days because of the internet. It's very difficult to commit myself to the couple of $100,000 required to make a good record, and with the knowledge that it will never return the investment. So that's a little problematic. Other than that, I study different things. For a few years ago, I was on a nuclear physics kick and studying nuclear fission and nuclear fusion, but mainly nuclear fission. Curious as to whether that would be a solution to not burning coal to lower the effects of carbon dioxide emissions, which are highly problematic. And recently I've been studying battery technology, batteries, anodes and cathodes and electrolytes and electron flows and separators and all the things around batteries to try to understand batteries well enough that I can make an informed decision when somebody says, I think that batteries need to replace hydrocarbons, but without understanding what they are, you can't follow that path.
And the last one for this part of it is just promote yourself.
I do a show every couple of weeks called the Livingston Taylor Show that started during COVID, and that's really fun for me. It's really because that allows me to go in all sorts of weird places, and I do, and have a good time with it. So I don't know what adventures are around the corner. What I like to say is stay tuned. We'll go someplace or other.
Well, Liv, I want to thank you so much for taking the time out to chat with me today, and best of luck to you with everything you do.
Beth, what a joy to be able to spend time with you. Bob and Beth rules. Thanks for letting me be on with you.